our members save about 20 cents per litre with our fuel deal. It goes directly into members' pockets and their businesses to ensure that they can keep operating.
Welcome to Talking Transport Show. I'm your host, Jacquelene Brother. With us this morning is Simon O'Hara, CEO of Road Freight New South Wales. Welcome, Simon. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here and great to be with you, Jacquelene.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a few things we want to discuss today. I'll just lead off and then we'll see what we get through in our time this morning. So let's start with some good news and some bad news in the one issue, the fuel crisis, obviously because of the issues in the Middle East. And that'll lead us into the Shell deal you've just done for your members in New South Wales. If you'd like to lead with that, we'll hit a bad and a good one right from the start.
No probs. Look, we've advocated pretty strongly in relation to road user charging over the course of the last 6 months. What we have said to government is freight needs some help, and under pressure operators and freight industry doesn't help anyone. And from our perspective, the federal government has ensured that the freight industry has not only been heard, but they've acted upon the representations from the freight industry collectively, and that's incredibly important. What we do see at the moment is slightly elevated fuel prices, and what that means effectively is we need to keep a watching brief on this. The geopolitical situation with Iran seems to have eased, but we've been uphill and down dale over the course of the last 6 months. So we could be looking at any sort of googly into the future. So what we suggest to government is that they keep a pretty close look on fuel pricing, but also the state of the industry. The industry is under pressure, and many of our operators are telling me that they haven't seen anything like this in their lifetime within the freight industry. And so those operators who have got 30, 35 years experience are speaking from not only an experience in background with freight, but also as business owners within a pretty tough industry, but also with an industry at the moment that's being squeezed. Our fuel deal with Shell is terrific. What we've been able to do is mint a new deal with Shell, and what this means for members of Road Freight New South Wales is effectively they are able to mitigate some of the costs associated with elevated fuel pricing. So on average, our members save about 20 cents per litre with our fuel deal. And what that means effectively is that goes directly into members' pockets and their businesses to ensure that they can keep operating. Now, what we're able to do was ensure that not only the operators see the benefit of the deal, but the truckies also, when they call in, can grab a free cup of coffee each week under this deal. It also means effectively that we've got a reduction on AdBlue costs as well. So some of our operators save in excess of 20 cents per litre for diesel, which is significant.
And that's to all Shell card holders in the trucking industry. Is that correct? In the New South
No, that's to the
your
Road
members.
Freight. That's for the Road Freight New South Wales members only.
Yep.
So some of our members save more than 20 cents.
Yep.
And what we have seen is some pretty good discussions with freight operators in New South Wales who have been able to negotiate as part of our deal terrific savings for their business. And this means effectively that the value of Road Freight New South Wales membership is quite a small amount when you compare it to the amount of savings that you get as part of the Shell fuel deal. So a terrific initiative.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and a very good reason to do that. Do you think the crisis we have in the Middle East at the moment with Iran, do you think that will force the government to take steps to hold more fuel on Australian soil from now on? Like we've been advocating for that for quite a long time.
That's a terrific question. And part of the issue is that the amount of silos, the amount of storage that we do have is limited. And it's not like you can turn around and say within 3 months we're going to increase the storage of fuel domestically, because it takes time to not only build these silos but also get planning approval, purchase that land, and to be able to actually set it up. So it's not something that turns on a dime, which is why we really need to, which is why what we're seeing at the moment is staggered fuel deliveries to ensure that our silo storage can keep pace with the amount of fuel deliveries that we receive. The good news is that Minister Bowen and the Prime Minister have done a terrific job in ensuring that we do have supply. And what is interesting is that from this crisis, the Asian markets particularly have felt a bit of a crunch in terms of not only access to oil and refining, but also what we are seeing is an increase to the cost of actually being able to produce diesel. So there are many factors that go into why prices have increased, but a terrific step, I think, and our members believe, is that we increase not only the capacity for refining, and we've seen about $4 million set aside to do a study on a new refinery in Western Australia, which we endorse, and we think this is a good step in the right direction, but also that we start to see a greater focus on resilience. And what that would mean effectively is that we allocate monies and we make it easier for businesses to be able to build storage facilities within Australia rather than just relying on, for instance, storage in the United States or somewhere else. There's a fair amount of distance in this big ocean called the Pacific, which requires time and effort to be able to bring those supplies over to Australia.
Absolutely. Okay, so the other thing we were going to speak about today was high productivity, high productivity. Whoa, I can't even say that word. High productivity vehicles in the New South Wales Ports Precinct and beyond. If you want to give us an update on that, Simon, that would be great.
Yeah, look, earlier in the year, we and the New South Wales government were able to ink some new reforms, which meant effectively that high productivity vehicles will have access to New South Wales roads. And we announced that with the Premier at Johnston's Transport. And what that meant effectively was that one of the age-old reforms that the trucking industry had been seeking, which is more bang for your buck. So we have effectively less trucks on the road and carrying more goods by virtue of more trailers, has been implemented, which is a terrific reform. And what that's meant effectively is that the door is now open to being able to see higher productivity vehicles on certain roads within New South Wales. The details are still being worked out, and what we are seeing is Transport for New South Wales actively pursue this. So this has been a big win for the industry, but also for Road Freight New South Wales. And we were very pleased to join the Premier in announcing that particular reform. And what that means for us is, particularly during a fuel crisis, you can move more with less fuel.
Absolutely. And I think, all these things, we have to be so progressive in what you're doing. And obviously, Road Freight New South Wales has been doing an awful lot of work lately on doing that. I've been following that quite closely. The other thing, which is getting a lot of publicity at the moment, and not necessarily good publicity, is the closure of Victoria Pass and the Great Western Highway upgrade, which is going to continue for at least another 12 months, I believe. If it seems to be a huge issue, obviously it is. We have to have roadworks to get better roads, but it can cause a lot of issues while it's ongoing. Obviously, I haven't been up there for a long time. If you want to just give us a bit of brief update on that, Simon, would be great.
Look, so as if the fuel crisis wasn't enough, what we saw was this major arterial road that services the Australian supply chain, but more specifically the central west of New South Wales, was closed as a result of faults in that road. And what that meant effectively was that they had to call the engineers pretty quickly, and they then ascertained that major repair was required. What we did see during that time was effectively not only were we advocating on the issue of the fuel crisis and ensuring that freight could keep moving and that we had fuel supplies, but that also this major road was able to be focused on by the state government to ensure that we had some sort of plan by which we were able to remedy it. And by that I mean that we're able to get a contractor in, or the New South Wales government was able to get a contractor in to rebuild or repair that road. Now, we were told about 12 months it's going to take to repair it and to build a new road. From our perspective, we're keeping a very, very close watching brief on that. And look, from our perspective as well, we did a fair bit of media advocacy on the issue to raise the importance of this road, because the diversion has caused its own set of problems. And we have seen some good flexibility, particularly from the New South Wales government and the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, around fatigue, rest areas, and the like, to ensure that any truckies that were caught in that diversion weren't pinged over aspects relating to fatigue and other things. So we have been advocating pretty hard on both fuel and also the closure of this major arterial road.
And I find that, communication is key in everything everybody does, and I think that's the big thing. If you communicate with the NHVR, the police, the transport companies, Transport New South Wales, especially the police, they often get left at the end of the line and are not communicated with, and I think that's so vital, because they're not the enemy. They're usually on your side, but often they're left out of all the communication strategies, and I find that very difficult then for them to be able to work in that framework, and that's a sad part of the industry has been for a long time. And I think that the more they're involved, especially in things like this that affects local communities, especially
Yeah.
the diversions and that, I think it's really important that we have the police involved at that grassroots level, so they're up to date on what's happening all around them, because that's the only way they can help us, if they know exactly what's going on. And I think they're not there to beat you. They're there to help you as much as they can, and really, really important they do that. The other thing we
Look,
want.
I think that's exactly right, Jacqueline. I think that's exactly right. And I think also that police officers, like truckies, have a limited capacity to be able to digest everything that's thrown in front of them and process it. So I think you're exactly right in relation to that. And from our perspective, we've always taken a positive approach in terms of dealing with New South Wales Police. And we certainly don't take the view that there's a enemy or anything like that. But from
No.
our perspective as well, there are human limits to what people can reasonably do in the circumstances, and both truckie and police officer face them quite frequently.
They do, and I think the fact that, we're all on the same side, in the fact that we all want the road safe, we all want to get home safely, and I think the us and them mentality has gone into a large degree, and rightly so, and I think that's really important. And especially, when we get back to the rest area, which you mentioned, the rest area crisis, really, it's been for a long time. That's something they have no control over either, but it's something they're expected to enforce the consequences of that problem, and which is really, really sad in lots of ways. There was a lot of publicity last year, I think, about a massive rest area you had just on the way out of Sydney. Is that affected in any way by this road closure? Is that on the same road? I can't really get my head around where that was now.
Yes, so that's the Western Sydney rest area, which has been announced with about 45 million dollars from the New South Wales government and about 45 million dollars from the federal government. And I'd like to give a shout out to Senator Stirl, who has done great work in terms of rest areas, amongst other things. And he's a great advocate for the industry. Um,
Absolutely.
and also a terrific personal friend. He has done so much, and some of the work he's doing, for instance, on sham contracting, is just excellent, and it's something that we need to call attention to. So, from our perspective, um, Glenn has been a terrific and remains a terrific advocate for the industry, and so really the rest area, to get back to your question, is yet to be built.
Okay.
So in terms of that rest area, which we were able to announce with Catherine King
That's
and Chris
correct. Yes.
Bowen and others, particularly some of the local MPs and some of our members, together with the TWU, Uh, that was a terrific announcement, and that formed part and parcel of what we'd been talking about with the state government, particularly before the previous election, where we raised about 11 points with the state government and also with the opposition and said, what are you going to do? How are we going to fix these things? So that was one of the 11 issues that we raised, which Minister Graham, our Transport Minister, was able to take on board and run with. So that's been a terrific development, and it shows that peak bodies can ensure that we get a direct benefit for not only the trucking industry, but more particularly truckies, because Sydney really didn't have any rest areas for truckies. It was
Exactly, yeah.
ad hoc, informal, and we've had meetings with Transport for New South Wales around the details, and that's been incredibly important to ensure that truckies can stop, rest, eat, and be able to get on their way. So that was another terrific initiative that we've been able to work not only with the state government but also with the federal government to ensure that truckies get the rest that they deserve.
Absolutely. And that bringing up Senator Stirl, who obviously we had on the show, the first show we launched with, uh, Glenn is, as you say, a very admirable member of our community and works tirelessly for our industry. As
He
a
does.
senator, and he brought up sham contracting, and he's been working with the peak bodies in the industry throughout that. Do you want to just add a little bit, because I know you're on one of those committees or roundtables? I'm not really sure what it's called.
Yes.
That is led by Senator Stirl. If you want to just add a little bit about that from your perspective.
Yeah, look, sham contracting really affects the good operators who pay their taxes, pay the rates of, pay their employees the right amount of money, whether that be EBA or other instruments. They do everything right, and they're undermined by sham contracting, which means effectively that their cost of doing business goes up and they face competitive pressures from those who choose to take a different path. And that different path leads to less worthwhile outcomes, such as perhaps less tax paid, super not paid, and it also directly affects safety. And safety on the roads is something that the community is really aware of and alive to. And so, from our perspective, Senator Stirl has really led the charge on this. And it's been interesting in those roundtables that I've been a part of in Canberra and also Melbourne. The initial response from bureaucrats was no, no, no. And Senator Stirl, to his credit, changed that approach, and it's now all steam ahead, full steam ahead in terms of being able to address the issue. And from our perspective, just watch this space. We have more to say on this. And Senator Stirl's not just a senator, but he's also a man that's got experience within the industry and knows what he's talking about, and that is without being negative about any group or people, that's incredibly rare within the federal parliament.
It absolutely is. I think that lived experience is great, and he not only talk to it and about it, is that he can talk so people can understand it. That makes things so much easier as well. I think, and Glenn leads from the front. I like that about it. Do you think all the publicity that the sham contracting is getting is making people not only take note, but it's reducing it before any actual action is taken against them? Do you think that's having that effect already because it's out there and it's getting publicity all the time?
I definitely think there's momentum behind it, and I think companies are certainly looking at this now, whereas before I think it was open season. I definitely think that there's momentum building, and from my perspective, Senator Stirl has raised and advocated on the issue of sham contracting in a way that gets noticed within the industry. And I mean, from my perspective as well, and look, we not only nominated but also gave Senator Stirl an award during COVID, because during COVID, if you remember, and I know it's a few years ago, if you remember, Senator Sterle and myself worked incredibly hard in New South Wales, even though he's a WA senator, to raise the issue of COVID and to ensure that what we do see is practical outcomes. And from our perspective, we gave thanks to him and Ben, his staffer, who's done a
Yeah,
wonderful job as well, to say
absolutely. It's
thank you for your
incredible. Yeah.
advocacy. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And from our perspective, there was a number of people that we gave awards to directly after the pandemic to say thank you. And Senator Sterle and Ben Walligan were two of them.
Yeah.
And there are a few other people in there, some that aren't perhaps. Some perhaps that aren't as recognised as they should be for the work that they do for the industry.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because Glenn never lets up. He's always out there advocating for better safety, better everything, better rest areas, better conditions, and I think that's his strength. And it doesn't matter if it's not absolutely affecting Western Australia, if it's affecting our industry in general. And I think we need, as you say, you recognise that, and I think it's really important. And he's always great to talk to, and he's great to get that message out there. And I know even during the pandemic when the rest areas weren't open, the toilets weren't open and all that sort of thing, he was very vocal on that at the time as well, and we never want to see that come again. So we don't want to talk about that. We're nearly out of time, but I know just quickly at the end, I know one of your members has been recognised several times with awards, national and state awards, in the last couple of minutes, and we'll probably get him on here later in the year along with his wonderful daughter, who's also been recognised during the industry. If you want to just speak about Formula Chemicals for a couple of seconds before we have to finish up, that would be great. I know you wanted to just recognise them quickly before we leave.
Yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. Lee Smart from Formula Chemicals has been a mainstay not only for the freight industry, but also as an advocate in the dangerous goods area. And what he does effectively, and I've seen some of the representations he's made recently, and we support him in that in relation to the movement of dangerous goods on the road networks. He raises pertinent, intelligent questions based on tremendous experience. His company has been a mainstay of Road Freight New South Wales, but I also think for the Australian industry, which is why he's been recognised twice nationally. And of course, we've recognised him over the years for the work that he's done. But just remember as well, Lee is not all just about business. He does tremendous work with kids with cancer in Fiji. And we regularly talk about the work that he does. And Kimberly and Simone absolutely support that work that he does, but they're also, in their own rights, incredibly accomplished businesswomen. And I know Kimberly, for instance, works tirelessly for the business, but also to advocate for their staff and to ensure that their staff are as happy as possible. So they're really well-rounded business people, but they also put back to the industry. They give back to the industry in a way that is absolutely commendable, and we're really proud to have Lee as part and parcel of Road Freight New South Wales and Kimberly, because the work they do, they never stop. They're always on doing something.
Formula Chemicals themselves as well, they are very involved in their local community, and I know some of their workers have come out of not very good circumstances, that they've trialled some things with that, and that was very successful. And I interviewed Lee once before, and all kudos to them for doing that, because the more we can involve people from a lesser backgrounds that need a second chance is admirable. And I think that they're a family that just keep on giving, like they're the gift that keeps
They
on giving. And
absolutely are.
I think that's really important. And as I said, we will have them here at some stage over the time of the show. But I knew you wanted to actually recognise them this morning, and I thank you for that. I think we've run out of time now, Simon, but
Okay.
it's really been wonderful to have you, and
Thank you
I'm
for having me.
sure really, really happy about that. And we'll get you back when we've got some news on the Victorian Pass and your next conference and all of those things. But
Yeah,
yes,
no,
some
no. And I'd just
updates.
like to take a moment to acknowledge you, Jacqueline, because I know you've been a mainstay of the industry, and particularly with transport women. And from my perspective, thank you for the work that you've done over these many years. We've worked together 10 years ago, all the way through to now. And I appreciate your work, and the industry also acknowledges all of the work that you've done over these years. I know you've juggled a range of things, and so from our perspective, thank you and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I'm trying to juggle migrant drivers at the moment. They're my thing at the moment. So I've been over to India to one of their weddings and come back, and it's been
Beautiful.
amazing. So I live in a migrant community down here, so it's
Yeah.
been amazing. But thank you for those kind words, and I'll catch up with you very soon, I hope.